G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome to my first impressions and game overview for what I've seen so far of Albion Online. This is my first time playing Albion Online in the current closed winter alpha, and so far it's been interesting. I've been enjoying overall discovering the mechanics of the game, and I'm kind of getting a bit of a sense of that RuneScape magic. Like, when I originally first started playing RuneScape and exploring and moving forwards into dangerous territories, going in deeper into the wilderness and discovering like different patches of gold and stuff to mine, kind of that I'm getting a little bit of a hint of that, guys. So there's some potential there, and I'm going to explore this game a bit more. But in this video, I'm going to cover what I've seen so far, give you guys a bit of an overview of how the game works, and share some thoughts on those things. So Albion Online is a free-to-play sandbox MMORPG. It seems to be aiming to gather some players that are looking for something that they've been missing from RuneScape and Ultima Online. It seems to be sort of trying to target both of those markets. And it's something that I'm surprised hasn't been done more of, especially in the realm of cross-platform. Like, we're not seeing very many cross-platforms that are really accessible. RuneScape became popular because it was a fairly deep, fairly large, and fairly fully featured accessible MMO. It was free to play and you could play it in a browser. Albion Online seems to be doing something like that, but taking a bit of a step forwards, and it's also going to be playable on mobile, tablets, and PC. Basically, you'll be able to play it on anything that it resembles a computer in some fashion. So as I mentioned, in this game, land is bought and sold by players. This is a sandbox MMO, and all cities outside of the beginner town are actually fully built and owned by players. There's actually, when the game first starts, or when the alpha first started, we traveled pretty fast and got to a new city before many other people had gotten there, and basically no one had bought any of the land yet. There was nothing built there. There was no crafting stations or anything like that, because all of that is constructed and owned by players. It gets quite interesting because there's kind of this motivation to claim up some land in an important city, and then be the first one to put like a high-level crafting station in there. So the first person to have like a repairing station for higher level gear, and then people out of desperation are going to have to use that, so they don't have to travel all the way back over to other cities, and you'll be able to charge them to be able to use that. You could charge a tax on the costs. Kind of an attractive idea. Now, I kind of hinted at something in this game, like how I was saying about like this idea of it seems to be hitting on that RuneScape magic a little bit, and that's because the game kind of plays at a bit of a leisurely pace, like it's a bit slower paced, and you have to basically travel everywhere you want to go. It's very exploratory, so basically you're going to be walking on foot, or you're going to be traveling on horse or oxback, basically to get anywhere in the Albion world. There are some sort of coastal cities that will have ferries that travel between major cities, so you can kind of fast travel that way. But if you're trying to go inland, or if you're trying to reach some of those higher level zones, trying to get into those higher level PvP zones to find some high tier resources, then you're going to have to walk there, and you're going to have to make your way there, and hopefully make your way back with the resources that you find. Now, on top of this land ownership and exploration, nearly all gear is actually crafted by players in the game. I have seen like one thing drop, actually two things. I managed to get a bow to drop, and Amy dropped a backpack, but most things in the game that you'll see will actually be crafted by players. It makes sense with that land ownership and players owning those crafting stations as well. Now, this works on a tier system essentially, so when you first start out, it kind of starts out like Minecraft. You start off by punching trees and punching rocks to get some raw materials to build your first scrappy beginner tools. And then that's the tier 1 stuff, the stuff that you can basically collect by hand. Then you use that tier 1 stuff to craft tier 1 tools, gathering tools, and then you can use those tier 1 gathering tools to gather tier 2 resources, so you can start to get some better, like some wood logs, and then start crafting some wooden planks, and then moving up and up through those tiers. Now, the first couple tiers, the first 3 to 4 tiers, are available in like kind of safer areas, but you're going to have to venture into more and more dangerous areas to get those higher tier resources, and that's where the open world PvP and the guild versus guild combat comes heavily into play. So in addition to this tier system, the game has no levels, no classes, and then progression is kind of handled through this reputation destiny board. So it's kind of a bit like Oblivion, if you guys have played that, where essentially by using a skill, the more you use a skill, the more you're going to progress in that skill, the better you're going to get with that skill. So that kind of sounds pretty similar to RuneScape, but you'll kind of see that the Destiny board has its kind of own different tiers and different bonuses for each tier. So essentially, if you keep using a bow to kill monsters, then you're going to progress through the bow lines, and depending on the type of bow you use, as you start to get further and further through that destiny board, you'll start to niche down further and further. So you start off initially just by fighting and killing some things, and then you kind of either might use some warrior gear, or you might use some spellcaster gear, or you might use some ranger gear, and that will kind of like unlock that tier of destiny board progression. And then maybe you'll be like, all right, I'm going to be a ranger, but I'm going to use throwing knives, and then you'll progress through that section of the destiny board, and it gets more and more niche the further you move out. So as I mentioned, you progress through the Destiny board by using things over and over again, and you can actually switch classes or switch skills or anything like that, basically whenever you like. If you want to start progressing instead into sword and board, and you've been using a bow up to that point, it's as simple as changing gear and then starting to use that stuff again. All of the skills in the game are tied to gear, and when you actually craft gear, you get a selection of different skills that you can choose and different passive bonuses on those pieces of gear. At the start, this is pretty basic, and you won't have too many choices, maybe just a choice in like an extra bonus or a choice in a skill here and there, but as you get higher tier gear, you start to get more and more options with the actual skills you take, and you get to better define your character and your roles in combat or in PvE or in whatever you're trying to do. Now, I've hinted at it a few times, yes, this game is very serious PvP. The starter zones are safe, and if you are downed in PvE in the starter zones, you will take degradation to your gear, and your gear can break and you can lose it, and gear repair costs are pretty pricey. But once you get further into the world, and once you start to progress northwards and into those more dangerous zones with those higher tier resources, so like, for example, now we're in tier 3 gear, we're going to start working our way towards tier 4 and 5 gear, and as we do that, we're going to have to move into heavier and heavier PvP zones. So it kind of starts off as safe zones where there's no PvP, then there is partial PvP zones where you have to flag as hostile to attack other people, and people who don't flag as hostile have a defensive buff. And then there is full PvP zones, which is actually kind of the majority, or the serious focus, like all of the good stuff is in those zones. Now in full PvP zones, there is full looting, so if someone kills you, they can take all of your stuff. It's kind of like in Minecraft, where if you travel down into a dungeon and you die and you lose all your stuff in lava, then you lose all your stuff. It's a good idea to keep backup gear in your stash, for example. So this whole like open world, really sandboxy system with no levels, no real restrictions on classes or anything like that, and this whole Destiny board that gets really, really niche the further you get into it. This whole thing supports this idea of, I really got the sense that this is a game you can be whatever you want to be in, or do whatever you want to do. So if you want to be the guy who is making legendary gem mining hammers, and then transporting them from city to city, then you can do that. If you want to be the best crossbowman in the land, you can do that. You can really niche down, or you can play a bit of a jack of all trades and try different things. It's technically possible to do everything in the game, though it's unlikely with the amount of things that you can actually learn and accrue fame and experience in, that you'll actually be able to do everything. So the game will have no cash shop. That's kind of an important point. Essentially, that means they won't be able to sell anything through for real money that is not attainable in game, or that is better than what you can attain in game. So this is good. Like after playing Arcade and seeing how that ended up, I was pretty happy to read that essentially. And there's been a lot of, obviously, like within a new free-to-play MMO, the question is, how pay to win is it? Is it pay to win? Is it not pay to win? So there being no cash shop is at least one thing that we don't have to worry about. Now you can buy gold. There's two resources. There's two kind of like currencies in the game, I guess. Resources are kind of their own currency, but essentially silver is the thing that you farm in game. When you kill mobs, you get silver, and it is essentially a resource. It's used for crafting, for upkeep, for buying land. It's used for basically everything. And then gold you can purchase with real money, and it can be used in place of silver for a lot of things. Not everything, not exactly sure to the extent of this at the moment, but basically it can be used to skip grinding mobs for silver, essentially. You essentially can buy your way into things in game. Now, you can't just go ahead and buy like tier 6 gear and then equip it straight away, because you essentially have to learn to use that anyway. You need to get or craft tier 1 gear and then use that, get or craft tier 2 gear and use that, and so on and so forth to move through. So it doesn't seem like any more pay to win than something like EVE Online, though I consider EVE Online to be a pay to win game, but I don't necessarily consider that to be a problem. We talked about this a lot on the live stream yesterday, and I'll probably talk about this in some more detail in the future in another video, but from what I've seen so far, it's basically too early to say the magnitude of impact that the ability to purchase gold and use it in place of silver will have, and that's essentially the end of it. Like, what is the actual magnitude of the impact? Because it is something that you can purchase an advantage through, and it is something that you can kind of speed up progression with, but it's all going to come down to the actual magnitude of the impact, how much that actually impacts the game, and whether it makes a shitty game or not. And that remains to be seen, guys, but I'll keep you guys informed on that. So guys, that's it for my first impressions so far. I am enjoying the game, and I'm engaged enough in learning the game that I'm going to be playing it more. I'm going to be streaming it at least for a few more days, and then reevaluating from there whether it's something I want to continue exploring. But I will bring you guys a bit more content, and hopefully sort of help cover this game for you guys and help you see if this is something you want to be keeping your eye on in the future, or at the very least helping you decide whether this is something you want to ignore. So anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.